Hi, and welcome back to Fresh BCSC Tech, or the BCSC e-learning help YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of our session from our It's Learning Zoom training series, specifically focusing on discussions, registrations, conferences, and more kind of special tools in It's Learning that you can stock your It's Learning toolbox with and help improve efficiency and connections with students in the classroom. So if you need access to this slideshow, it is here at the bit.ly, the short link, bit.ly/itsdiscuss. And there's lots of resources in this slide deck. It's really helpful if you want to go through things at your own pace, if you want to practice building and have a reference tool later on. There are written guides and video tutorials for all of the tools that I'll talk about today in this slide deck presentation. And if anything changes on It's Learning, I always go back and update the slides to reflect this as well. So you always have a working, up-to-date copy available to you. So, a couple things to get us started. In this session, a couple of our goals are to focus on activity tools in It's Learning and learning how to use them, lesson ideas, and how they can be used to support universal design for learning in your learning environment, and then practice building some of these tools as well. So if at any point in this video you feel like it's beneficial and helpful to pause what you're doing to practice using this tool, I would totally recommend doing that so you can get your feet wet, and then if you have any questions, you can write those down and then bring them to me, and I can do my best to answer them. So the first tool that we're going to talk about is the discussion tool on It's Learning. So if you've ever been in an online class before or participated in a discussion board in grad school, undergraduate school, or even any other institution, a discussion tool is where you can have a discussion forum and an ongoing conversation about a specific topic, or you can answer someone else's points or questions in their own discussion post. So it's a great way for students to build community and practice sharing ideas in an academic way, communicating with students in a professional academic way as well. And it's a tool that's built into It's Learning. So it supports audio, text, video, links, and pictures as options for students' responses or their posts in a discussion. So it does not have to be text heavy, writing heavy. It can be whatever options that you want to provide your students. And there's lots of different ways you can use this tool in classes. So throughout e-learning and even before that, I checked into teachers' classes to see what tools they were using on It's Learning. And this is one where I feel like teachers picked up a lot of the steam with this tool and started using it more often during e-learning. Some teachers set up a discussion as just a help center that all students could post questions in, and then other students could answer as well. So it was a great way for students to ask for help and then get help. Maybe when the teacher wasn't available to answer it right away, a student would go in and help the other student out, which is pretty amazing. Other ways that teachers have used this is kind of like a social, emotional check-in and to build classroom community and to build relationships. There were a few teachers that had ongoing discussions throughout the school year, and they would post in questions that were just get to know you questions or random questions that students would answer that weren't necessarily tied to academics, but were a fun way to help build community and get to know each other better. And a lot of the questions that the teachers used for these specific discussions were ones that students had suggested. So they were excited to see their topic be the one that the other classmates were answering. And the other idea here is to use this as a bell ringer or exit ticket. So maybe you have a flipped learning model in your classroom, and before the next day's lesson, you have students watch a video at home, and then to start off lesson the next day, so when they watch the video at home, they go and they post a discussion comment on here. And then when you have class the next day, you kind of use that as a springboard to go into research or to explore things further or to get a feel for what students had a question on. So that's another way you can use it. It can be an exit ticket for the end of class. If a student has a question about something, it could be a point for them to ask on here, or to kind of sum up their learning, or to pick a research topic, or maybe to share their research questions and get feedback from others. It's a great communication tool and a social interaction tool all within this platform. So now I'm going to show you that this slide is here if you want to practice diving in and using your own resources here, kind of do this at your own pace. I'm going to exit out of my slideshow here so I can show you how to build a discussion and then some features that you can use that are helpful for you in sorting student responses and even categorizing how they respond to questions. So if I go to It's Learning and I click the Add button and then Show All, this is where I'll see the discussion tool. It does not show up in that little short menu. It's further down under Activities. right below assignment is where I'll see discussion. So if I click that, couple of pointers here when you're first making a discussion. It's helpful if you put a title. If you're a secondary teacher, up to you and how you want to structure this. Done this a couple of different ways. You teach multiple class periods a day. I taught 4 sections of US history when I taught at the high school. So for me, what I would do is to help students know which one to respond to. Sometimes I would make a separate discussion for each class period. Other teachers make one discussion for that topic, and then they have different threads within this discussion for the different class periods. So it's up to you. It's personal preference. You can try both out and see what students think works best, what works best for you. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. It just depends on what you would like to do. So for this one, I'm going to do and that's my title, and it's for all my class periods. And then here is my space where I could write my description. So you can type out instructions here. This is where you can give students a reminder on expectations and how we respond to each other in a discussion. And it's really good to do some front loading on that so students know this is how you respond professionally. If you're responding to someone, you don't have to say, I agree. Add more than just I agree. Elaborate on your thoughts and your opinion. If you disagree with someone, do so respectfully, kind of setting some of those parameters there. And there's lots of resources if you just look on Google for expectations for discussion boards in K through 12 classrooms. You can pull some of those examples and copy and paste them here. That's what I've done before and what I've seen other teachers do. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. So here we go. So for this specific prompt, my students have a couple of different choices in what they can answer. So they can focus on social contributions of this group in history, economic achievements, political achievements, or religious achievements. And this is kind of a way that you can use this feature on the discussion tool in itslearning called categories, and it allows your students to tag their response with one of those categories or more than one category, which I think is helpful for you as the teacher because you can sort by categories when they're done. Students can look through and it color codes. So if their assignment is to respond to one other peer who discussed a different category or a different topic, they have the ability to easily visually see which ones responded to social, which ones talked about political, and then only respond to the one they need to. It's just a great way of organizing these responses because it can be a lot to manage very quickly. So that's what I'm going to have my students do here in the sample one. Right. And if I wanted to make this a little bit more universally designed for my students, then I can also add all these other features to it. So this rich text toolbar is here once again on itslearning. I can add videos. I can add a link that maybe is connected to this assignment, picture, video of myself explaining expectations, or an audio recording. You have the ability to add in those different features here and make it a little bit more accessible for your students. So after I've done that, here are some more of the settings for an assignment. I'm going to copy this because I like to be clear in what I do. So you can use categories. And if you're wanting to do what I was describing a few minutes ago, then click yes. And here's where you can put those different categories. So I'll do social, religious, economic, and political. And you can decide colors. And again, it's a limited colors, but you can pick here from these options. I don't typically like to do red because I feel like that has a negative connotation. There we go. I can keep adding lots and lots of different categories as well. Other way you can use this, if maybe it doesn't make sense to do different response types for this questions, maybe you provide students 4 different questions and they get to pick which one they answer. And question 1 is yellow, question 2 is green. So you know when you respond which ones the students did. So when you go through to sort their responses as a teacher, you know you're only looking at question 2 responses, you're only looking at question 3 responses, so on and so forth. So there's lots of different ways you can use this depending on how you want to structure your question and how you want to manage this as a teacher. So here we go. Have my category set up. I can set the time span this is active. So if I want it to be closed at a certain time and open at a certain time, I can do that. I can make it hidden until I turn it on. I'm just going to leave it active for now. I can also associate state standards with this as well. So if we're discussing standard 7.3.4, which is actually the one that's linked to this, I can add it and add more, but I do have to make sure those are already added into my course first, and we have a separate video that explains that. But I would click save. All right. And so my students see the instructions here when they click on this assignment, tells them to pick these different categories. And here's again a different way that you can structure this. So if I have multiple class periods, I can put class period 1 is its own thread, and then only students in period 1 would respond to the class period 1 thread. Class period 2, same thing, class period 3. For this one, maybe it makes sense for me to break up my question here into these different threads. So only social responses go here. Economic responses are their own separate thread. Political, it's up to you. I find that it's a little bit easier to break it up by class period for the threads, just so you know if you have hundreds of students on your roster, which group is which, and I have to sort through all of them at once. But again, that's personal preference. So for this one, just going to do this as its own first period grouping, or if you're having all of your students respond there, this is where they would type their answer. So what I typically like to do is put first period, and then I always paste in my same instructions again here so that my post is the very top of the thread and it's the first one that students see from me as the teacher. Right? And I don't put a category on this one because this is just their starting point. And I'll click save. So if I'm a first period student, I'll go and I'll click this one. And this is where students start responding. So students have 2 ways to respond. If they reply with a quote, then my question shows up above their response before they start typing. This is really helpful if there are lots of posts down this thread and the student doesn't want to have to keep scrolling up and down to remember what they're supposed to be answering. So if I reply with a quote, it puts my question prompts there. And then me as a student, I can start typing my response here. All right. Add my response there. If I wanted to add more content too, I don't have to have just a written response. I can add an audio recording, a video, if I want to put a picture, I can do all of that. Your students have the same flexible options for responding here as you did when you created the assignment. And here is where I would add my category. So my instructions told students they have to add a category. So I would put economic here and then post my reply. All right. And there we go. So it's color coded. Students can keep responding from there. I can edit my post. I can delete it if I want to get rid of it. Maybe I didn't like what I said, or I can add more conversations here. And then I always have the opportunity to add another category. If you do the reply with quote, it does send a notification to the student here that someone responded to their post. It won't do that to me because that was me that responded to myself, but the students would get a notification and alert that someone responded to their specific post. So that's an example. I'm going to add another one here just so you can see what it looks like when you go to sort through by different categories. that, add my category. All right, so again, it shows the different color there. That's the category. So at quick glance, I can see that I have different responses. And if I'm the teacher and I'm wanting to go through and sort this, even as a student, you can sort the responses. I can sort by participant, by date, if this has been open for a while, or by category. And it groups them all together so I can see them in that way. And that's how you use the discussion tool. Again, there's lots of opportunities to use this. Really, you're only just limited by your creativity. And it's helpful if you do this a couple of times to get students' feedback and see what works best for them and what works best for you. Because there are different ways you can set this up, and it's really up to your personal preference on how you'd like to do that. The next tool that I'm going to show you is the registration tool on itslearning. Before I do that, I do want to point out that there are some resources here that show students how to post a response on a discussion board. They're in English and in Spanish. These resources will all be added to your itslearning course automatically, so you can direct students there if they get stuck or if they need help. And there's a video tutorial too. And then there's more ideas for itslearning tools for social interaction included here as well. The next tool I'm going to show you is the registration tool on itslearning. And this one is not one that's used super often because I think it's not very well known, but it's one that really has a lot of opportunity and is great for saving teachers time. And all teachers love having a little bit more time on their hands to do other things on their agenda. So the registration tool is a polling tool that allows students to sign up for topics, group work, events, assignments, whatever you want them to sign up for. And what's great is that with the registration tool, if you are wanting to do a group project in your class or a research project, and let's say that my research project is on ancient China, and I want my students to pick different topics. And I don't want to listen to 10 presentations on the Great Wall of China. I only want to have 2 students pick that and then have other students sign up for other topics like fashion, religion, inventions, military, all of those other topics. Then I can set limits on how many students can register for a specific project topic. That way we get a variety of topics covered, and my students know that once that topic is gone, it's covered and they can't sign up for it anymore. You can configure that within this registration tool. This is also helpful for a variety of other lesson plan ideas. Here are some of those ideas. You can have students use the registration tool to sign up for projects, like I said, and project topics. They can sign up for project groups, presentation dates. So if you have a variety of days and students need to sign up for whatever day they want to present, you can use this tool for that. You can use it for auditions or performances in your class, if maybe you're a band or choir teacher or you're doing some type of talent show. Also for research topics and presentation topics, like I just said, being redundant. Opinions for course recommendations. So if your students want to have some voice on how your next unit is planned, maybe last unit you did a test to wrap up the unit or a project and you want to see what students want to learn about next or what activities they want to see more of in your class, you can use this to kind of get their feedback as well. You can also use this for planning conferences with students. And peer reviews. So if you're wanting to do some type of one-on-one conferencing or small group conferencing with students, you can put a bunch of different time slots there on the registration, and the students sign up for whatever time slot they want, and you as the teacher can see that. If you do novel studies in your class and have a limited number of each type of book, you can also use this to have students sign up for whatever novel they'd want to read and indicate first choice, second choice, whatever have you. So there are a lot of different ways you can use this tool. Next slide gives you some self-help resources on how to use this and how to create, but I'm going to dive into the platform and show you myself. So if I go to itslearning, I click the add button, show all, and it's over here under the hangman game is registration. All right. And this is the registration tool builder. So let's say that for my registration, I want to use this for students to sign up for project topics. All right, so that's where my instructions are. Again, it's only a text option here, not the whole rich text editor, but you can give your students some info there. And here is where I give the choices for the registration. So I always like to go through and list out all my choices first before I do the limitations, if there are any. So add new option. All right, so if I have some of those different options there, I can keep going and going and going. Here is where you can add some limitations for your students. So only so many students can register for these topics. So I could do put those limits there. Scroll a little bit further down, and here's where you have even more options. You can have it to where students have to explain their choice, and maybe their explanation could be their research question or why they're interested in this topic. If there's something specific they want to focus on, or if they just want to give a rationale, you can require that they do that. Then what happens when the student goes and does this registration activity, as soon as they check the box for their choice, it brings a little text box and says, I select religion because, and then they have to answer with a few sentences or words there. You can have it to where they can see each other's choices or not. And then here, this is more helpful if you're not wanting to set limits. So if you're leaving this open-ended where as many students as they want can select inventions as a choice, then maybe it makes sense to have them pick more than one option. But right now I'm going to set this at 1 is the minimum and 1 is the maximum. But if you're wanting to give students the opportunity to indicate first choice, second choice, maybe a part of their explanation is saying, inventions is my first choice, religion is my second choice. So then you know when you go through, maybe if their project idea changes partway, which one they wanted as their second option. If you set a deadline, then they see that it's an assignment or a task to-do list item for them. You make it mandatory and active, and you can allow them to edit their choices until the deadline. So I'll click save. And now it's going to show you what the teacher view is. So this is what it looks like on the teacher end of things. I can always go and change things if I need to. Registrations tab here is where I would see student responses as they come in. So I only have 3 options here, so that's why it says 0 of 3. And I can view which students did that. Over here where it says not registered, this is my class list. So this is a sample class. I only have 2 people in it. This shows me all of the students who have not answered this registration question. So I can let them know that, hey, you haven't filled this out yet. I need you to do that. But what I'm going to do right now is actually toggle over to one that I have sample responses in. So you can see that. All right, so here's an example of using the registration tool for a novel study. All right. So here we are. There is one student who responded and they picked The Hunger Games as the book they want to read in class. Okay, so I had set this specific registration up to where students had to give a reason for why they picked this. So this is that student's reason, and this is that participant. So I can remove their response, edit it if I need to for the student, if they type something wrong or if I want to change it. But what's cool here is that you have these options across the top. So if you're a spreadsheets person and you like to be able to manipulate it in there and filter things and do even more, you can download this and view it as an Excel file, and it will show all of the different categories here and the number of students that picked it and their names and their reasons. And then you can also do create course groups, and this allows you to send messages to the students that are in the Hunger Games book study group so that they know what their upcoming information is and all of that. And if you use course groups, then you can even change permissions on folders and assignments so that only certain groups have access to them. So if I have a folder over here that's Hunger Games book study, then I can put all of the students in that group have access to that folder, and then the other kids don't see it, so they're not confused. So that's kind of a cool way to use the registration tool. Other examples of using this, Another research project example. Here again, it is picking topics for a research project. And if you want to have itslearning create those course groups for you, if you have a lot of students in your class, and this could be a quick way to see all the students that might be in the inventions group together. Just an idea. So this is a really cool tool for kind of making things a little bit more efficient and doing some of your project signups and planning all within itslearning instead of maybe on a piece of paper or a sign-up board in your classroom. All right, the next tool and the last tool is a part of this presentation is the conference tool. The conference tool, like the name implies, is a communication tool, a social interaction tool that can be used to conference with students on itslearning. So it's a little bit comparable to Google Meet, but it does not support the same number of people in a specific call that Google Meet can. So this one is good for small group conferencing, maybe working with a few students, not the whole class, because there are some limits here. You can only have 25 people in a conference at one time using itslearning's conference tool, and only 10 of them can be in a video conference. Technically, only 4 people in that video conference can actually have video going at once. So ideas for using this: peer review. Maybe if a student is in another class and they still need to talk with them, they can peer review. Or if they're at home, they can peer review that way. Maybe if you're working on something in class, the conference tool has the ability for it to be like a text-based chat. So if you're working with a student one-on-one or working with another group, but you still want students to be able to message with each other, then they can do this. It could also be an option for connecting with other classes in the district or in your building. If you can't physically be in the same place, this could be a way to communicate with those students. So I'm just going to show you now how to use the conference tool. There are tutorials that are linked here on the next slide that you can use at your own pace. So if I go to itslearning and I click Add, Show All, the conference tool is again in this Activities section. And I'll click Conference. And when I go to set this up as a teacher, I have to put my title. And again, you have the opportunity to add all kinds of resources here with this rich text toolbar, video, audio, links, rubrics, whatever have you. You can add standards to this too. And here are the different options that you have when you set this up. So if you do the video conference where there's sound, video, text all going at the same time, 10 people max, 4 people with video. Text-based chats allows up to 50 participants with only 4 viewing panels at a time. So you won't be able to have video going in that one. It'll only show a couple of people at once. You can decide when it's active. So this is helpful if we're doing an e-learning environment, and that's how I actually use this tool when I was in the classroom. I give my students choices on the activity they could do for the day, and one of the choices was explain your answer on a video chat to Miss Gerard. So what they did is I set up this time span that this video conference call was open because I didn't want them to be in this conference call without me and for them to be waiting for me. So I set it up during the time span that I communicated with them so they could hop in, ask their questions, talk with me, get help if they needed to, and then we moved on from there. Otherwise, you can set it as active or you can turn on when it's active. And I'll click Save. So this is the way it looks if you do the text-based chat. You can have different font colors if you want, and it actually does change the font color for all the different people that are in the chat. It's just like a chat room, like the name implies. If you kick, it sends out a sound notification and a little alert to everyone that's in the chat that they need to participate and you're trying to get their attention. And whisper means that you're not in the chat. You can't receive, you're in the chat, but you won't receive notifications. If you do the video chat option, you can always edit a conference at any point in time to where it is the video chat if you forgot to set it up that way. I just did. You can click Conference. And you might be prompted to enable Flash Player first. So if you do that, you'll just have to refresh your screen and it will work. But this is what it looks like. If I wanted to start my video, I click start. I can't do that right now because I'm on a screencasting tool that's using my camera. But that is how I could get that going. And it's the same chat option that I have there. So I can participate by typing things out or by talking. And that is how you can use the video conference tool within itslearning. So if you need additional resources, know that there are written guides and videos for all the tools that I showed you today. But other ways you can get help, you can subscribe to these two YouTube channels. I post all my tutorial videos on both of those, as well as my personal YouTube channel. Actually, there's 3 YouTube channels mentioned on here. And if you participate and sign up to subscribe for email updates from the fresh BCSC Tech blog, you'll also get an email that shows whenever there's a new blog post, which often includes video tutorials and written guides and ideas for using itslearning and other educational technology tools. There are itslearning guides for every tool on itslearning in BCSC Connect. There's an itslearning button there on the homepage for that course that shows you where to go. If you need help, please don't be a stranger. Reach out. My email is there if you need it. And if you participate in this session virtually, you'll be getting PGPs soon if you fill out the form to receive them that's on the document that has this video and the accompanying slideshow. Thank you for joining, and I hope your lesson planning with itslearning is going well, and I look forward to seeing you in another virtual session soon.